Captain Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of New Eden's orbital defense station, watching the morning sun rise over the planet below. The golden light touched the crystal domes of the cities, making them sparkle like jewels scattered. Across the green landscape, 2 million people lived on New Eden, and Jake had sworn to protect every single one of them. The coffee in his hand was still warm when the alarms began to scream. "Captain, we have contacts dropping out of hyperspace." Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez called from the sensor station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. "Multiple ships, configuration unknown." Jake set down his coffee and walked to the command center. The main screen showed space around New Eden, and it was no longer empty. Dozens of dark red ships had appeared from nowhere, arranged in a perfect attack formation. They were unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The hulls seemed to absorb light, and strange symbols glowed along their sides like brands burned into metal. "How many?" Jake asked. 57 vessels, Amy replied. "Captain, they're huge. The largest one is nearly twice the size of a battleship." Jake felt his stomach drop. New Eden's defense station was powerful, but it was designed to handle pirates and raiders, not a full invasion fleet. The colony had 6 patrol ships, but they were on the far side of the system. "Try to contact them," Jake ordered. "Standard greeting protocols?" The communications officer, a young man named Billy Santos, worked at his console. "Broadcasting on all frequencies, Captain." No response. On the main screen, the alien ships began to move. They approached New Eden with the slow, deliberate pace of hunters who knew their prey could not escape. The largest ship, a massive vessel that looked like a burning mountain, moved to the front of the formation. "Captain," Amy's voice was quieter now, "I'm detecting energy buildup in their weapons. Multiple ships are powering up." Jake grabbed the intercom. "All hands, this is the captain. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Battle stations, this is not a drill." The defense station came alive with activity. Weapon systems powered up, shields activated, and the crew moved to their posts. Jake knew it would not be enough. They were outnumbered and outgunned by an enemy they knew nothing about. The first alien ship fired. Jake had seen energy weapons before. He had been in space battles during the border wars. But this was different. The beam that struck New Eden's atmosphere was not blue or green or white like human weapons. It was deep red like blood, and it burned. The beam hit the northern continent, and the entire landmass caught fire. Not just the trees and grass, but the rocks, the soil, even the water. Everything burned with that same red fire that would not go out. "My God," Amy whispered. "What kind of weapon is that?" More ships fired. Each beam created a new sea of fire on the planet below. The crystal cities began to melt, their beautiful domes turning to liquid and flowing like tears. Jake watched in horror as millions of people tried to flee, but there was nowhere to run. The fire followed them, consuming everything in its path. "Captain." "Incoming transmission," Billy said. "Put it through." The main screen changed, showing the bridge of the alien flagship. The creature that looked back at them was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were large and black, and when it spoke, its voice was like grinding stone. "I am War Commander Velthic of the Zephyrian Dominion. You have witnessed the power of Hellfire. Your world burns as 47 others have burned before it. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison. Why are you doing this? What did we do to you?" The alien's face showed no emotion. "You exist. That is enough. The galaxy belongs to the strong. You are weak. You will serve or you will burn." "We'll fight you," Jake said. "We won't just give up." War Commander Velthic made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your weapons cannot harm us. Your shields cannot stop Hellfire. Look at your world, human. Look and understand." Jake looked. At the planet below, the fires were spreading. Entire continents were ablaze with that terrible red flame. The smoke was so thick that he could barely see the surface. In the space of an hour, New Eden had become a ball of fire spinning in the darkness. "Amy," Jake said quietly, Can you get a message to Earth? The hyperspace relay is still working, she replied. But I don't know for how long. Send everything. Tell them what happened here. Tell them about the Hellfire. Amy's fingers flew over her console. Message sent, Captain. The alien ships turned their attention to the defense station. The first beam cut through their shields like they were made of paper. The second beam hit the station's main power core. Jake was thrown to the floor as the station shook. Emergency lights flickered on, casting red shadows on the walls. The smell of burning metal filled the air. Hull breach on deck 7 through 12, someone shouted, life support failing. Jake pulled himself up and looked at the main screen. The alien ships were moving closer, their weapons charging for another strike. He could see the Hellfire building in their cannon mounts, ready to finish what they had started. Captain, Amy called, I'm getting reports from the surface. The fires are not going out. The Hellfire burns everything, even stone and metal. People are trying to hide in caves, but the fire follows them underground. Jake closed his eyes. He had failed. The people of New Eden were dying, and there was nothing he could do to save them. The most advanced human colony in the galaxy was being destroyed by an enemy they had never heard of. All hands, abandon station, Jake ordered. Get to the escape pods. Captain, what about you? Amy asked. I'm staying. Someone needs to keep sending data to Earth. They need to know what these weapons can do. Amy shook her head. I'm staying too. We'll send the data together. Other crew members refused to leave as well. Billy Santos remained at his station, broadcasting everything they saw. Chief Engineer Pete Walsh stayed to keep the transmitters running. They all knew they were going to die, but they wanted their sacrifice to mean something. The alien ships fired again. This time, the Hellfire hit the station directly. Jake felt the heat wash over him as the walls began to melt. The air itself seemed to catch fire, burning his lungs with every breath. Still transmitting, Billy reported, his voice calm despite the flames around him. Earth is receiving everything. Jake looked at the planet one last time. New Eden was gone. The beautiful world that had taken 50 years to build was nothing but fire and ash. 2 million people had died in a single day, killed by weapons that turned matter itself into fuel for endless flames. Amy, Jake said, add this to the transmission. Tell Earth that these aliens think we're weak. Tell them that the Zephyrians believe we'll surrender just because they showed us their power. Amy smiled, even as the fire closed in around them. What else should I tell them? Jake thought about his daughter on Earth, about the billions of humans who had no idea what was coming for them. He thought about the alien commander who had called them weak, who believed that fear would make them kneel. Tell them that humans don't break easily. Tell them that we remember our dead. And tell them that when we fight back, we fight with everything we have. The transmission ended as the defense station broke apart, consumed by Hellfire. In the darkness of space, the alien fleet regrouped and prepared to move on to their next target. They had destroyed New Eden as they had destroyed 47 worlds before .war. Commander Velthic was satisfied. The humans would receive the message and surrender as every other species had done. Zephyrian Dominion would add another race to their empire. He had no idea that he had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. 3 months had passed since New Eden burned. The message from Captain Jake Morrison had reached Earth along with the terrible images of a world consumed by Hellfire. Every human in the galaxy had seen the recordings. They watched cities melt like candles. They heard the screams of 2 million people dying in flames that would not go out. The Zephyrian Dominion expected humanity to surrender within days. Every other species had done so after witnessing the power of Hellfire. War Commander Velthic positioned his fleets around the major human systems and waited for the communication that would signal Earth's defeat. The communication never came. President Helen Carter stood in the Oval Office on Earth, looking out at the city of Washington. People walked the streets as if nothing had changed, but she knew better. Everyone was afraid. Everyone was angry. The attack on New Eden had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping for generations. "Madam President," said Admiral Pete Jackson as he entered the room, "the Global Defense Council is ready for your address." Helen nodded and followed the Admiral to the secure conference room deep beneath the White House. The room was filled with military leaders, scientists, and politicians from every nation on Earth. All of them had seen the footage from New Eden. All of them knew what was coming. "Ladies and gentlemen," Helen began, 3 months ago, an alien force calling itself the Zephyrian Dominion destroyed our colony at New Eden. They did this not because we threatened them, but because they wanted to show us their power. They wanted us to be afraid." She paused and looked around the room. "They succeeded. We are afraid. But fear has never made humans surrender. It has only made us more dangerous." Dr. Lisa Green, the head of xenobiology, stood up. "We have studied the alien transmissions. The Zephyrians have conquered 47 worlds using the same tactic. They destroy one major population center, then demand surrender. Every species has given up after seeing Hellfire." "But we're not every species," said General Frank Miller. "We're humans. We don't break that easily." Helen walked to the large screen at the front of the room. It showed a star map with red dots marking Zephyrian fleet positions. "They have positioned their ships around our major colonies. They're waiting for us to give up. They think we're like the other species they've conquered." "What do they know about us?" asked Senator Mary Johnson. Dr. Green activated her tablet. "Based on their communications, they know very little. They see us as another weak species that will fold under pressure. They don't understand human psychology. They don't understand what makes us fight." Admiral Jackson stepped forward. "The Zephyrians have made a mistake. They think showing us their power will make us submit. Instead, it has given us a target." Helen pressed a button on the remote control. The screen changed to show classified documents marked with the highest security levels. Project Nightmare has been in development for 60 years. It was created as a last resort weapon, something we hoped we would never need to use. The room fell silent. Most of the people present had heard rumors about Project Nightmare, but only a few knew the truth about what it really was. "Dr. Susan Blake has been working on this project since she was a graduate student," Helen continued. "Her team has created something that will change the way wars are fought. Something that will show the Zephyrians that humans are not weak." Dr. Blake, a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, stood up. "Project Nightmare is not a traditional weapon. It doesn't destroy ships or kill soldiers. It does something far worse. It attacks the mind itself." She walked to the screen and pulled up technical diagrams. "Humans are unique among galactic species. We have the most advanced imagination in the known universe. We can conceive of terrors that don't exist in nature. We can create fear from nothing but thought." "How does it work?" asked General Miller. "The psychic resonance amplifier broadcasts concentrated human emotion directly into alien minds," Dr. Blake explained. "We take our deepest fears, our worst nightmares, and we make them real inside enemy consciousness. The target experiences every horror that has ever kept a human child awake at night." The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Senator Johnson spoke. "That's barbaric. We can't use psychological torture as a weapon." "They turned 2 million of our people into ash," Admiral Jackson replied. "They did it just to scare us. They're planning to do it again to every human world until we surrender." Helen raised her hand for silence. "The decision has been made. We will not surrender to the Zephyrians. We will not let them destroy our colonies one by one. We will fight back with everything we have." Meanwhile, in space near the planet Kepler 442, Commander Rick Torres received his sealed orders aboard the destroyer USS Vengeance. He read the message twice, then burned it as instructed. The orders were simple but terrifying. He was to test humanity's new weapon against the Zephyrian fleet. Rick had served in the military for 20 years. He had fought pirates and smugglers. He had seen combat in the border wars. But nothing had prepared him for what he was about to do. "Commander," said Lieutenant Kate Brown, his second in command. "The crew is asking questions." "They know something big is happening," Rick looked at his crew. They were good people, loyal soldiers who trusted him with their lives. Soon he would ask them to do something that would change them forever. "Tell them the truth," Rick said. "Tell them we're about to show the aliens what happens when they mess with humanity." On the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship, War Commander Velthek studied reports from his fleet commanders. The humans had been quiet for 3 months. Their ships moved in predictable patterns. Their communications were standard military traffic. Everything suggested they were preparing to surrender. "War Commander," said his aide, a young officer named Keftar, "the humans are evacuating their frontier colonies. They're moving civilians to the inner systems." Velthek nodded. "Good, they understand the situation. Soon, they will contact us with terms of surrender." But something bothered him. In his experience, species that were about to surrender became more active in their communications. They sent messages back and forth, arguing about terms, debating whether to fight or submit. The humans were doing none of this. "Keftar," Velthek said, "what do we know about human psychology?" The aide checked his records. "Very little, War Commander. They appear to be a typical carbon-based species. They have emotions like fear and anger, but they are not as advanced as other races we have conquered." "Then why haven't they surrendered?" Keftar had no answer for that question. In her laboratory beneath the Colorado mountains, Dr. Blake worked through the night with her team. They had been preparing for this moment for decades, but now that it was here, she felt sick to her stomach. "Dr. Blake," said her assistant, Dr. Nancy Webb, "the amplifiers are ready. We can broadcast from any ship equipped with the transmitters." Blake looked at the machines her team had created. They were not large or impressive. They looked like ordinary computer servers. But inside those machines was something that could break minds and destroy souls. "Have we tested them enough?" Blake asked. "We've run every simulation possible," Nancy replied. "The amplifiers will work exactly as designed. The question is whether we should use them." Blake thought about the images from New Eden, she thought. About the families who had died screaming as Hellfire consumed their world. She thought about the 2 million people who had been murdered just to send a message. "The Zephyrians started this war," Blake said. "They chose to use terror as a weapon. Now they're going to learn what real terror looks like." The final preparations were complete. Human ships throughout the galaxy received their new equipment. Crews were briefed on the psychological weapon they would soon deploy. Everyone understood the stakes. The Zephyrians had brought Hellfire to humanity, expecting them to surrender in fear. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. They had shown humans what it meant to be helpless, to watch their loved ones die, to face extinction. Now humanity was about to show the galaxy what they had learned in return. The Zephyrians thought they were the predators in this relationship. They were about to discover that they had made themselves the prey. War Commander Velthek received his final intelligence reports. The humans were moving their ships into position near several Zephyrian fleets. Their formation suggested they were planning to engage in conventional warfare. He smiled. It would be a short battle. The humans would learn why 47 worlds had chosen surrender over destruction. He had no idea that the humans were not coming to fight a conventional war. They were coming to teach the galaxy a lesson about the darkness that lived inside the human mind. The Zephyrian fleet arrived at Kepler 442 with the same confidence they had shown at 47 other worlds. War Commander Velthek expected another easy victory. The humans would see Hellfire, panic, and surrender within hours. Admiral Carl Murphy waited for them with 12 human ships arranged in a defensive formation around the planet. His flagship, the USS Liberty, was equipped with the most advanced weapons humanity had ever created. But these weapons were not made of metal and energy. They were made of something far more dangerous. "Admiral," said Captain Jenny Walsh from the communications station, "the alien fleet has dropped out of hyperspace. 59 ships, same configuration as the attack on New Eden." Carl nodded. He had studied the recordings from New Eden hundreds of times. He knew exactly what the Zephyrians would do. They would demand surrender, demonstrate their power, then begin the slaughter. But this time, things would be different. "Open a channel to all ships," Carl ordered. "This is Admiral Murphy. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. Remember your training. Remember New Eden. Make them pay." On the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship, War Commander Velthek studied the human formation. 12 ships against 59. It was almost insulting. Did the humans really think they could fight the Dominion with so few vessels? "Open communications," Velthek commanded. "Let us end this quickly." The main screen showed Admiral Murphy's face. The human looked calm, almost relaxed. Velthek had seen this before. Species often tried to appear brave in their final moments. "Human Admiral," Velthek said, "I am War Commander Velthek. You have seen what happened to New Eden. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick," Murphy smiled. "I've seen what you did to New Eden. 2 million innocent people burned alive. You did it to scare us. You wanted us to surrender." "Yes," Velthek replied, "and now you will—" "No," Murphy said. "Now we're going to show you what real fear looks like." The human ships began to move. But instead of charging forward or trying to run, they spread out in a wide circle around the Zephyrian fleet. Velthek watched in confusion. This was not a proper battle formation. "War Commander," said his sensor officer, "the human ships are broadcasting on unusual frequencies. The signals are penetrating our shields." Velthek frowned. "What kind of signals?" Before the officer could answer, the first wave hit. It started as a whisper in the back of Velthek's mind. A small voice telling him that something was wrong. He tried to ignore it, but the voice grew louder. It spoke of darkness closing in, of being trapped with no escape, of dying alone in the cold void of space. Around him, his bridge crew began to shift uncomfortably. The communications officer, a veteran of dozens of battles, suddenly looked pale. The weapons officer was staring at his hands as if he had never seen them before. "What is happening?" Velthek demanded. Dr. Susan Blake sat in her command center, deep beneath the Colorado mountains, watching the battle through sensors on the human ships. Her psychic resonance amplifiers were working perfectly. The signals were reaching every alien mind in the Zephyrian fleet. "Dr. Blake," said her assistant Nancy, "the amplifiers are at 20% power. Brain scans show the aliens are beginning to experience elevated stress responses." Blake nodded. "Increase power to 40%. Begin phase 2. The whispers in Velthek's mind became screams. Suddenly, he was not on his bridge anymore. He was falling through endless darkness with no ground beneath his feet and no sky above. He reached out for something to grab onto, but there was nothing there. Then he was drowning. Water filled his lungs and he could not breathe. He clawed at the surface, but it was too far away. The light grew dimmer and dimmer until there was nothing but black water and the burning in his chest. Then he was buried alive. Dirt pressed against his face, filling his mouth and nose. He tried to dig his way out, but the earth was too heavy. He could hear his own heartbeat growing slower and slower as the oxygen ran out. "War Commander!" His aide Keftar was shaking him. "War Commander, you need to respond." Velthek blinked and found himself back on the bridge. But the nightmare was not over. Every few seconds he would slip back into the darkness, experience another terror, feel another death around him. His crew was falling apart. The helmsman was screaming about spiders crawling under his skin. The weapons officer was huddled in a corner, crying about his children who had died years ago. The communications officer was clawing at his own face, trying to remove eyes that were not there. "Return fire," Velthek ordered. "Destroy the human ships," but his crew could not function. The nightmares were too strong. Every time they tried to focus on their duties, their minds filled with horrors beyond imagination. They experienced every fear that had ever haunted a human child. They felt the terror of being lost in the dark, of being chased by monsters, of being abandoned by everyone they loved. On the USS Liberty, Admiral Murphy watched the alien fleet drift helplessly through space. The mighty Zephyrian Dominion, conquerors of 47 worlds, had been reduced to a collection of madhouses. Phase 2 complete, reported Captain Walsh. The aliens are experiencing full psychological breakdown, Murphy nodded. Begin Phase 3. Let them feel what New Eden felt. Dr. Blake increased the power to 60%. The amplifiers began broadcasting a new signal. This one was different. Instead of general human fears, it carried the specific terror of the people who had died at New Eden. Velthek suddenly found himself standing in a burning city. The Hellfire his own ships had created surrounded him on all sides. He could feel the heat melting his skin, but he could not die. He could only burn forever. Feeling the agony of 2 million people who had died screaming, he saw a human mother trying to shield her baby from the flames. He felt her desperation, her helplessness, her love for a child she could not save. He experienced her death as if it were his own, feeling the fire consume her body while her mind remained aware. Then he was the baby, innocent and afraid, dying in agony without understanding why. The pain was beyond description. It was not just physical torment, but the emotional devastation of a life cut short, a future destroyed, dreams that would never be fulfilled. The nightmare shifted. Now he was an old man, watching his grandchildren burn. He felt the weight of 90 years of life being erased in minutes. He experienced the rage of dying before his time, the sorrow of leaving loved ones behind, the fear of facing the unknown. Every death from New Eden played out in his mind. He died as a teacher trying to save her students. He died as a father shielding his son. He died as a child calling for parents who were already dead. He died 2 million times, each death bringing its own unique horror. Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, the same nightmare played out. Every alien mind experienced the deaths of every human who had died at New Eden. They felt the terror, the pain, the despair of innocent people being murdered for no reason other than to make a point. Ships began to drift as their crews collapsed. Some aliens died from the psychological shock. Others went insane, their minds unable to process the weight of what they had done. A few, like Velthek, remained conscious but broken, forever changed by the experience of feeling their victims' pain. "Dr. Blake," Nancy called out. "Several alien ships have stopped responding. We're detecting massive system failures across their fleet." Blake watched the readings. The Zephyrian fleet was dying, not from weapons or explosions, but from the simple act of understanding what they had done. They had killed millions of innocents, and now they were being forced to experience every single death. "Reduce power to 40%, Blake ordered. "We don't want to kill them all. We want them to remember this." On the bridge of his flagship, Velthek slowly stood up. The nightmares had stopped, but the memory remained. He could still feel the echo of 2 million deaths in his mind. He understood now what the humans had meant when they said they would show him real fear. "War, Commander," Keftar whispered. "What are your orders?" Velthek looked at his broken crew. Half of them were unconscious. The others stared at nothing, their minds shattered by what they had experienced. His mighty fleet was helpless, defeated by an enemy that had never fired a shot. "Withdraw," he said quietly. "Send a message to the Dominion. Tell them we have encountered something we do not understand." The human ships watched as the Zephyrian fleet limped away from Kepler 442. Many of the alien vessels could barely move, their crews too traumatized to function properly. It would take years for them to recover, if they ever did. "Admiral Murphy, open the channel to all human ships. This is Admiral Murphy. The enemy has been defeated. They came here expecting to burn another world. Instead, they learned what it feels like to be burned." The victory was complete, but it left a strange feeling in the air. The humans had won, but they had done so by reaching into the darkest parts of their own minds and using that darkness as a weapon. Dr. Blake shut down the amplifiers and sat back in her chair. The weapon had worked perfectly. The Zephyrians would think twice before attacking another human world. But she wondered what they had unleashed. Humanity had always been different from other species. Now the galaxy would know just how different. They really were. The news of the battle spread quickly through human space. The Zephyrian Dominion, the most feared military force in the galaxy. The news of what happened at Kepler 442 spread through Zephyrian space like wildfire. War Commander Velthak's broken fleet limped back to their staging area at Volf 359, carrying reports that no one wanted to believe. The humans had defeated them without firing a single shot. They had used some kind of mind weapon that made experienced warriors scream like children. High Command ordered an immediate withdrawal from human space. The Zephyrian Dominion, which had never retreated from any enemy, pulled back their fleets and tried to understand what had happened. They sent diplomatic messages to Earth, offering to negotiate a peace treaty, but humanity was not finished. President Helen Carter stood before the Global Defense Council, reading the latest intelligence reports. The Zephyrians were scared. Their mighty fleets were hiding behind their own borders, afraid to venture into human territory. But Helen knew this was only the beginning. They're trying to negotiate, she told the assembled leaders. They want to make peace now that they've seen what our psychological weapons can do. Admiral Pete Jackson shook his head. They killed 2 million of our people. They burned New Eden just to scare us. Now they want to talk peace because we fought back? Dr. Lisa Green activated her tablet showing new intelligence from Zephyrian space. Our sources report that many of their ships are still non-functional. The crews that experienced our nightmare broadcasts are suffering from severe psychological trauma. Some may never recover. Good, said General Frank Miller. But it's not enough. They need to understand that there are consequences for what they did. Helen nodded. Dr. Blake, what's the status of Project Nightmare Phase 2? Dr. Susan Blake looked tired. The success at Kepler 442 had proven her weapons worked, but she took no joy in what they had accomplished. The empathy inverter is ready for deployment. It's more powerful than the psychic resonance amplifier and far more dangerous. How does it work? Asked Senator Mary Johnson. Where the first weapon showed aliens human fears, Blake explained. This device forces them to feel the pain of every human they've killed. Not just the physical agony, but the emotional suffering. They experience death from the victim's perspective. The room fell silent. Even after seeing what the first weapon could do, the idea of the empathy inverter was disturbing. 47 worlds, Helen said quietly. The Zephyrians have destroyed 47 civilizations. Billions of innocent people died because of their conquest. They need to understand what that means. Meanwhile, Captain Danny Clark prepared his task force for the mission that would change galactic history forever. His ship, the USS Retribution, carried the first empathy inverter ever deployed in combat. 12 other ships accompanied him, each equipped with the terrible new weapon. Danny had served in the military for 15 years. He had fought in border skirmishes and anti-piracy operations, but this mission was different. This time, he was carrying a weapon that could destroy minds and souls. Captain, said his first officer, Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, the crew is asking questions about our mission. They know we're carrying something unusual. Danny looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian fleet was hiding, thinking they were safe. They had no idea what was coming for them. Tell them the truth, Danny said. We're going to make the aliens pay for what they did to New Eden. We're going to show them what justice looks like. At Volf 359, War Commander Velthak tried to restore order to his broken fleet. Many of his ships were still drifting in space, their crews unable to function after experiencing the human nightmare weapon. The proud warriors of the Dominion had been reduced to trembling shadows of their former selves. War Commander, said his aide Keftar, High Command is demanding a full report. They want to know how humans defeated our fleet. Velthak closed his eyes. The memories of Kepler 442 still haunted him. He could still feel the echoes of 2 million deaths in his mind. Every time he tried to sleep, he experienced the burning of New Eden from the victim's perspective. Tell High Command that humans are not like other species, Velthak said. They have weapons that attack the mind itself. They can make you feel the pain of everyone you've ever killed. Keftar looked confused. But that's impossible. No species has that capability. The humans do, Velthic replied, and we gave them a reason to use it. The human task force dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Volf 359 system. Captain Clark studied the tactical display, counting the alien ships. 67 vessels, many of them barely functional. The mighty Zephyrian fleet looked like a collection of broken toys floating in space. All ships, this is Captain Clark, he broadcast to his task force. Remember what these aliens did? Remember New Eden? Remember the 2 million people who died screaming in Hellfire? Today, we make them understand what that felt like. Dr. Blake monitored the mission from her command center on Earth. The empathy inverter was her greatest and most terrible creation. Unlike the psychic resonance amplifier, which broadcast human fears, this weapon did something far more personal. It reached into alien minds and forced them to experience every death they had caused. Dr. Blake, said her assistant Nancy. The task force is in position. They're requesting permission to activate the empathy inverter. Blake hesitated. She knew what this weapon would do. She had run countless simulations, studied every possible outcome. The Zephyrians would not just be defeated. They would be broken in ways that could never be repaired. Permission granted, she said. Activate the empathy inverter. The first wave hit the Zephyrian fleet like a tsunami of pain. Velthic was reviewing damage reports when suddenly he was not on his bridge anymore. He was dying on a world called Ketra Prime, the first planet the Dominion had conquered. He felt the spear pierce his chest, but he was not the warrior holding the weapon. He was the civilian being killed. He experienced the terror of a farmer who had never held a weapon, facing soldiers who had come to destroy his world. He felt the man's love for his family, his desperate desire to protect them, his helplessness as the life drained from his body, then he was dying on another world. This time he was a child, hiding in a ruined building while Zephyrian soldiers searched for survivors. He felt the little girl's confusion, her inability to understand why the sky was burning, her pain as the Hellfire found her hiding place. The deaths came faster now. He died as a mother shielding her baby. He died as an old man too weak to run. He died as a teacher trying to save her students. He died as a doctor treating the wounded. Each death brought its own unique agony, not just physical pain but emotional devastation. He experienced the grief of parents watching their children die. He felt the rage of the helpless facing extinction. He understood the despair of civilizations being wiped from existence for no reason other than Zephyrian ambition. 40-7 worlds, billions of deaths. Each one played out in his mind with perfect clarity. He felt every heartbreak, every loss, every moment of terror. The weight of it was beyond imagination. Throughout the Zephyrian fleet, the same nightmare unfolded. Every alien mind was flooded with the pain of their victims. They experienced death after death, feeling the emotional and physical agony of billions of innocent people they had murdered over the centuries. On some ships, entire crews died from psychological shock. The sheer weight of suffering was too much for their minds to process. Others went permanently insane, their consciousness shattered by the experience of feeling their victims' pain. Dr. Blake, Nancy reported, we're detecting massive system failures across the alien fleet. Most, ships have stopped responding entirely. Blake watched the readings with a mixture of satisfaction and horror. The weapon was working perfectly, but the cost was enormous. The Zephyrian fleet was being destroyed not by explosions or energy weapons, but by the simple act of understanding what they had done. War Commander Velthic found himself back on his bridge, but he was no longer the same being who had started this war. The deaths of billions weighed on his consciousness like a mountain of grief. He understood now what his people had done. They had not just conquered worlds. They had destroyed entire civilizations, ending countless lives and dreams. War Commander, Keftar whispered. Most of our ships are not responding. The crews are dead or unconscious. Velthic looked at his aide with eyes that had seen too much. Do you understand what we've done, Keftar? Do you feel it? Keftar nodded, tears streaming down his face. The empathy inverter had affected him too. He could feel the echo of every life the Dominion had taken, every family they had destroyed, every world they had burned. "We're monsters," Keftar said. "We're all monsters." Captain Clark watched the alien fleet drift helplessly through space. The empathy inverter had done its work. The proud Zephyrian Dominion, conquerors of 47 worlds, had been brought to their knees by the simple act of feeling their victims' pain. "All ships, this is Captain Clark," he broadcast. "The enemy fleet is neutralized. They have experienced what billions of innocent people felt when the Dominion destroyed their worlds. But the victory felt hollow. The humans had won, but they had done so by forcing their enemies to experience unimaginable suffering. They had weaponized empathy itself, turning the capacity for understanding into an instrument of war. Dr. Blake shut down the empathy inverter and sat in silence. 6 months after the Battle of Volf 359, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session on the neutral world of Nexus Prime. Representatives from over 300 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, but all eyes were on the human delegation. Everyone had heard the stories. Everyone knew what humanity had done to the Zephyrian Dominion. Ambassador Tony Chun walked calmly to the speaker's platform, his footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. Behind him sat the other human representatives, their faces showing no emotion. They looked like ordinary beings, but every alien in the room knew better. These were the people who had created weapons that could destroy minds and souls. Council Speaker Vexhai, an ancient being whose species had founded the Galactic Council, centuries ago called for order. "We are here today to address the actions of humanity during their conflict with the Zephyrian Dominion. Reports indicate that humans have developed weapons that attack the mind directly. This violates every principle of civilized warfare." Murmurs spread through the assembly. Most species had never seen psychological weapons before. The idea of attacking an enemy's consciousness was foreign and terrifying to them. Tony stepped forward. "Honored council members, 6 months ago the Zephyrian Dominion attacked our colony at New Eden without warning or provocation. They murdered 2 million innocent people using weapons designed to cosmic suffering. They did this not to capture resources or defend territory, but to terrorize us into surrender." "That does not justify the use of mind weapons," interrupted Ambassador Krelton of the Hegemony Alliance. "You have created devices that torture the consciousness itself. This is barbaric? Barbaric?" Tony's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. "The Zephyrians destroyed 47 worlds. They killed billions of innocent people. They turned entire civilizations to ash. And you call our response barbaric?" War Commander Velthic sat in the Special Observation Section, flanked by medical attendants. The once proud leader of the Dominion fleet was a broken shell of his former self. The empathy inverter had left him permanently changed, unable to escape the weight of the deaths he had caused. "Speak, War Commander," Council Speaker Vexhai commanded. "Tell us what the humans did to your fleet." Velthic stood slowly, his hands shaking. "They showed us the truth. For centuries, the Dominion conquered world after world. We told ourselves we were bringing order to chaos. We believed we were superior beings spreading civilization." He paused, his voice breaking. "The humans made us feel what our victims felt. Every death, every moment of terror, every family destroyed. We experienced the pain of billions of people we had murdered. The weight of it was beyond imagination. This is exactly why such weapons must be banned," said Ambassador Thizes of the Crystalline Confederacy. "No being should have to endure such psychological torture." Tony turned to face the assembly. "You're missing the point. We didn't torture random beings. We showed killers the consequences of their actions. We made them understand what they had done to innocent people." Dr. Lisa Green, part of the human delegation, stood up. "The Zephyrian Dominion conquered 47 worlds over 2 centuries. Every other species in this room either surrendered to them or stayed out of their way. Where was the Galactic Council when billions were dying? Where was justice for those victims? Uncomfortable silence filled the chamber. It was true that the Council had never taken action against the Zephyrian Dominion. Their military was too powerful, their territory too vast. It was easier to let them conquer distant worlds than risk a galactic war. The Council cannot police every conflict in the galaxy, Speaker Vex-High said defensively. We are a diplomatic body, not a military force. Exactly, Tony replied. You couldn't stop the Zephyrians, so you ignored them. But when someone finally fights back and wins, suddenly you're concerned about the methods used. Ambassador Quinder of the Merchant Coalition leaned forward. But these mind weapons you've created, they could be used against any species. How do we know you won't use them on us? Tony smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. You don't? That's the point. For the first time in galactic history, there are consequences for aggressive actions. Species like the Zephyrians can't just destroy worlds without fear of retaliation. This is madness, declared Ambassador Krelton. You're threatening the entire galaxy with psychological warfare. We're not threatening anyone, Tony said. We're simply making it clear that actions have consequences. If you attack innocent people, you'll be forced to understand what that means. Dr. Susan Blake, watching the proceedings from Earth, made final adjustments to her latest creation. The Council debate was going as expected. Some species were horrified by humanity's weapons. Others were quietly pleased that someone had finally stood up to the Zephyrians. But all of them were afraid. Dr. Blake, said her assistant Nancy, the new amplifiers are ready. They're 10 times more powerful than the ones we used at Vol 359. Blake nodded. Good, I doubt we'll need them, but it's better to be prepared. The galaxy needs to understand that humanity is not to be trifled with. Back on Nexus Prime, the debate continued. Species after species condemned humanity's use of psychological weapons. They called it inhumane, barbaric, a violation of all civilized norms. But none of them could answer Tony's central question. Where had they been when the Zephyrians were committing genocide? You speak of civilization, Tony said, addressing the full assembly. But civilization means protecting the innocent. It means standing up to bullies. It means ensuring that actions have consequences. The Zephyrian Dominion violated every principle of civilization for 2 centuries, and this council did nothing. He walked closer to the alien ambassadors. Now? You're afraid because we fought back. You're terrified because we won. You're horrified because we used weapons you don't understand. But most of all, you're scared because you know that if you ever threaten humanity, you'll face the same consequences the Zephyrians did. War Commander Velthek stood again, his voice barely above a whisper. The humans didn't torture us. They showed us who we really were. For the first time in my life, I understood the weight of my actions. I felt the pain of every innocent person I had killed. It was the most horrible and necessary experience of my existence. You were broken by it, Ambassador Theises pointed out. Your entire fleet was destroyed by psychological trauma. Yes, Velthek agreed, and we deserved it. The humans gave us something we had never given our victims. They let us understand what we had done. They showed us mercy by allowing us to live with that knowledge. The chamber fell silent. The broken war commander's words carried more weight than any diplomatic speech. Here was the leader of the most feared military force in the galaxy, admitting that humanity's response had been just. Council Speaker Vex-High called for a recess to allow private discussions among the delegates. The alien ambassadors huddled in small groups, whispering urgently about what to do with humanity. Some wanted to impose sanctions. Others suggested forming an alliance. All of them were afraid. Tony Chun stood in the human delegation's private chamber, looking out at the alien city beyond. Earth had given him clear instructions. Humanity would not apologize for defending itself. They would not abandon their psychological weapons, and they would not tolerate any attempts to restrict their sovereignty. Ambassador, said Dr. Green, the other delegations are meeting privately. Some of them are talking about forming a coalition against us, Tony nodded. Let them try. They couldn't stop the Zephyrians when they were committing genocide. They certainly can't stop us when we're defending ourselves. When the council reconvened, Speaker Vexhai announced their decision. The Galactic Council formally condemns the use of psychological warfare weapons. We call upon humanity to cease development of such devices and submit to international oversight. Tony stood slowly. The answer is no. You refuse to comply with council directives? Speaker Vexhai asked. We refuse to be disarmed by beings who stood by while billions were murdered, Tony replied. Humanity will keep its weapons. We will continue to develop new ones, and we will use them against any species that threatens innocent life. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every ambassador. But we make this promise. As long as you leave humanity and our allies alone, you have nothing to fear from us. Attack us or our friends, and you'll learn what the Zephyrians learned. You'll understand the true cost of your actions. The council session ended in chaos. Some species demanded military action against humanity. Others called for immediate peace treaties with Earth. A few quietly began evacuating their border colonies, just in case the galaxy had changed forever. For the first time in history, there was a species that could force aggressors to confront the moral consequences of their actions. Humanity had not conquered through superior technology or overwhelming force. They had won by weaponizing something no other species possessed in equal measure: the capacity for empathy and understanding. On Earth, children played in the rebuilt parks of New Eden. The colony had been restored, its cities rising from the ashes like symbols of human resilience. Above them, human patrol ships maintained their watch, crews trained in the use of psychological weapons that could reach into any enemy mind.